Shep Naz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shep Naz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And today, after we talked about Pastor Tim's message yesterday, we thought, well, it would be great to have not only Pastor Tim, but to have his wife, Debbie, join us. So welcome in Pastor Tim and Debbie.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, in full disclosure, Debbie wasn't completely informed ahead of time that this was going to happen. I think at one point, maybe Tim mentioned, this would be kind of a neat idea. And then this morning, as we were getting ready to record, I kind of looked over. I was like, what's Debbie doing right now? And she's off having breakfast with a friend, and then she got a phone call, and so now she's here. So we appreciate that. I'm going to swing this just a little bit this way. There we go. Well, we thought this would be a great time just to kind of debrief after a couple decades of your experiences here, but I do have a curious question. First of all, just yesterday we heard, and of course during the message on Sunday, we heard Tim describing the bridge walk, and he referred to the fact that you were a little apprehensive. So I would love to hear the bridge walk story from your perspective.
Wow. It took a lot of convincing. Penny Jackman talked to me a lot about it and convinced me I could do it. Not convinced me, encouraged me to do it. I have a real fear of heights, and so I just couldn't imagine how I was going to be able to do that. But it did help having the harnesses that attached, but I still couldn't look down for a long time. After we had walked for a while, then I would glance off to the side a little bit, and then that would help me get a little bit more comfortable as I did it a little bit at a time. And then I could stop and look out and be okay. But I really never, ever, ever guessed I would have been able to do that.
Well, we're so glad that you were able to and that you can share about it today. Now, this also made me think that you've been on a long journey with this guy, and this was probably just one of many things that you've been talked into doing with him. So whoever would like to share can jump in. I've never heard the story of how you guys came together, so I would love if one of you would be willing to share about how did Tim and Debbie come together.
You can talk.
Well, I'll just start by saying that I was with Swanson's Ice Cream at the time, not spelled a little differently than me. It's not Swanson's Ice Cream. I'd worked for them in Chicago, and then later I took a job with them in Houston, Texas. And it was when I was in Houston that I met Debbie, and as you can tell from her softened but southern drawl, that makes her who she is. It really does. I love that has not left her. But I met her in Houston, and we were attending. Separately, we didn't know each other at first going into this at a place in Houston, St. Paul's United Methodist Church, and we were in a singles Sunday school class, and they wound up having an outing, and I'll let Deb kind of tell the story of the outing that we went on that day.
Well, someone in the Sunday school class had some property north of Houston, and it was a community, and they had a pool, and Tim was working he was working till noon on Saturday, and I had not met him.
Serving ice cream.
And I had not been in Sunday school the week before, so I had not met him. So he came up midday, and I never did talk with him the whole time we were there. And so we had all gone in the church van, and so I'm walking toward the van, and everybody stares at me and said, "Who's going to ride back with Tim?" And it's like, well, why don't you put me on the spot? But I guess I will.
The first of many times.
Yeah. And so I saw him at church the next morning, and Monday night he called me and asked me to go out. And I said, well, it can only get better. He saw me in a swimsuit with no makeup. My hair's wet. It'll only get better. So we started dating, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
Now, so you didn't stay in Texas, though. At some point, there was a move. How did that come about?
Well, there was a series of moves. In order to accommodate our wedding date, which we actually moved up, I got an offer from Shell Oil Company to go to work for them. And I'd been on hold with them because they had had a freeze. Then then the freeze went off. They said, "Okay, it's time to go, and we want you to go to Los Angeles East." Was the territory that they wanted me to go to initially. And we were getting ready to be married, but had not been married at that point. They said, "We're willing to move you both if you will move on the same day." So we moved up the wedding date so that we could accommodate that. They moved her apartment, my apartment, and we moved from Houston, Texas to Los Angeles for 3 months of training with Shell Oil Company. And then subsequent to that, went to the Bay Area. And my first assignment was in San Francisco as a salesperson to all of the Shell stations in that area. And so we were in San Francisco for a time, some suburbs just south of there, also in San Jose. And then we decided we wanted to start a family, but didn't necessarily want to start our family there.
In San Francisco.
And so we decided to move back to St. Louis, where I grew up. And so we were back in St. Louis for a time. In St. Louis, had a couple of different jobs with Emerson Electric, and was there with Emerson, and then they transferred us from St. Louis to Maysville, Kentucky. And in Maysville, Kentucky is where I first came to know who the Church of the Nazarene was. We were not Nazarenes prior to that time. Eddie Eastep was our pastor in Maysville, and it was from there that we then Eddie knew about our call to ministry that we'd had from a prior experience, but we hadn't seen that come to fruition yet. I was still in a secular role, but again, Eddie was our pastor there. He came on up here to Shepherd, and then we wound up coming from from Maysville to Shepherd in 2003 when he called us to come up here. So we've had a bit of a journey. I think I've had my driver's license in 6 states. I'm just trying to stay one step ahead of the law, and so far I've been successful.
Nice. Well, Debbie, when you met this guy and when you married this guy in your early married life, you were marrying a businessman, right? And they had successful careers with different companies. At some point, you guys sensed God calling you to do something different. Mm-hmm. And what was that like for you? Like transitioning, 'cause that seems like a big change of like, okay, we're going to move again. And not only are we going to move again, but now I'm going to be a pastor's wife. Mm-hmm. How was that transition for you?
It's interesting you asked this because I just shared this at Prayer and Praise yesterday. Debbie Zernis had they had an open mic to share and talk about Tim or myself, and Debbie Zernis talked about how she had prayed with me at the altar the weekend that Tim came to interview. And so everyone else went around and spoke, and then I asked for the mic, and I explained further what she had said. And we stayed at the Holiday Inn across the street, and Tim had arranged to have us check out later. Well, I woke up and wanted to go home so bad and didn't want anything to do with being here at Shepherd. And And she told me I could stay later, and I said, no, we're leaving.
We don't need to make this any longer.
So we came into the office, and I knew I was going to be able to tell from the look on Tim's face how it had gone, and he was just beaming. And I'm like, what do we do now? So Debbie brought me over here, and we prayed at the altar. And I always get goosebumps when I talk about it, because the Holy Spirit used her in an amazing way. And I got up, and I felt like all doubts I had ever had were lifted, and I felt like so much weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I just never looked back, and I knew it was the right thing.
And with those calls, I mean, God works it out the way only God can. But you kind of get bootstrapped into, now all of a sudden people are expecting you to fulfill the role of whatever they think a pastor's wife is.
Yeah, I was nervous about that. And I had talked to Diane Eastep about it since we had been in church together in Maysville. And I said, I feel like I'm a fish in a bowl, and everyone's watching me. And she felt more, I think, but it didn't take long to where I didn't feel that way, and just got to know people gradually, and I didn't feel threatened, so it didn't take long.
You know, I would just like to add something real quick, and that is just affirming and celebrating the people of Shepherd, because they are a healthy congregation in the way that they accept and love and support the staff and their spouses. They truly do. There was not an expectation from Shepherd Church, from the congregation, that Debbie would be this or that, or in some churches I know that's not the case, and it can be very unhealthy and very, very unfair to a pastor's spouse. But Shepherd has not been that at all, and I've been very thankful for that.
Yeah.
Now, a lot has changed in the time that you guys have been here, and I thought it would be interesting to hear from either one of you or both about, as we're embarking on construction right now, and we're expanding the school, and soon they're going to be working on the pavilion out in the field. What was the physical campus like upon your arrival, and what have you seen change over the years?
Wow. When I came, the school was strong and growing. I came in 2003, and it was doing very well. We had 9 modular buildings that were all attached together to make one large building. But the city of Gahanna, in their great wisdom, decided that modular buildings were no longer going to be possible. Yeah. And so we sold those on eBay. We really did. And so those made their way over the mountain range over to somewhere in North Carolina. I think those are still over there somewhere today. And we didn't get much for them, but they sold those, and they said we had to build a school. And so a year after, we broke ground and built the school that we have today, and we are now building again onto that. The rest of the campus was pretty much the same at that point. The lower field was not used like we're using it now. Trying to think what else might have been different at that point. Back at that time, we had pews, very comfortable wood pews. We actually had some chairs up front and pews in the back. That was probably the strangest combination I'd ever seen at a church. But we eventually went through something called the New Day Project in 2008 and 9, or 9 and 10, I guess it was, and we replaced those with chairs. And we didn't do any new brick and mortar, but we did a whole bunch of things on the inside of the church and in all the venues in the central complex, which has now been redone again, in the FLC, putting in new floor. We had wonderful carpet in both gyms. for basketball, which if you're a basketball person, you know that carpet and basketball don't mix, and there was all kinds of rug burns and you name it, but we ripped that carpet up, put in new floors. I mean, there's just been a lot of changes over the years.
And even in the sanctuary, we've had several transformations over the past decade or so of, how there used to be like a choir loft and a baptistry up front, and now that's kind of been morphed. And ironically, we're doing more baptisms now than ever before, but we're doing them down on the floor right in front of people.
Yep.
So different ways to do things, but still doing some of the many same things that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as you kind of look over, I'm sure you've done a lot of reflection here recently over the past years, and being under 3 different pastors here. And I'm not going to ask you which is your favorite. I mean, you can tell me if you want, but I wasn't going to ask. But I was just wondering if there was some things that, as either one of you have been reflecting over the past, this time period of knowing you're going to be transitioning out, if there's been things that have stuck out to you, like, wow, these were just golden moments here at Shepherd, and things that really just like, I was glad I was part of that.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing that pops out to me, and Deb may have other ones to share, but in 2004, Christmas of 2004, about a year after I came, we had a significant ice storm here in the area, and it knocked out, if you had above ground power, light poles and all that, you likely didn't have power in your neighborhood. There was a lot of, quite a number of people were without power. Well, we had power here at the church. We had underground power coming into the church. And on just a couple hours' notice, the city of Gahanna called us up and said, hey, we need a place to be opened as a shelter. And so we opened up our FLC, our big gym on the far end, as a shelter, and we collaborated with another local ministry through Peace Lutheran Church. They brought in cots. We had no idea how many people might show up. At one point, they told us that there was a senior building over on the west side of Gahanna that could have as many as 100 residents that might be coming to us. And so we were getting kind of nervous.
Yeah.
Because we had no idea how many might come. And so I went out and I tried to, and was successful in collaborating with a number of businesses. So we had places like the bread store give us tons of bread. Jersey Mike's gave us all kinds of meat and cheese. Tim Hortons, they were without power. They gave us their whole overnight bake. We brought all this stuff into the church to be able to share with whoever might come. And we had about 25 or 30 people that wound up coming and staying with us for several days during that time. And it was one of the most special Christmas experiences I've ever had. There was one family that came to us. Their last name was Simpson. And Glenn and his family came from an area of Mifflin Township. They weren't even in Gahanna, but they'd heard that we were open and available. They came in, and it was through that experience that Glenn prayed to receive Christ.
Amen.
Later on, Glenn would pass away from ALS, and we were able to be a part of some of the struggles that his family had. But it was because of that ice storm, and just saying yes in the collaboration with local businesses to be able to work together to make a difference for a number of people.
I can't help but think our current message series, we're talking about rhythms of grace, and we're talking about the blessed strategy for evangelism. Mm-hmm. And it was right during, a letter that we haven't got to yet, but as for serving, of how in that serving moment, it opened up this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't an agenda. It wasn't like we're going to open up the church so that maybe we have a chance to share the gospel. It was we're going to open up the church because people need a place.
Right.
And we were just there to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, then it opened the door for him to make an eternal decision, taking care of a temporal need, and ended up having an eternal solution for him.
Yeah.
Any other things that you would want to share? Deb?
I think for me it's more personal. Just like Tim said earlier, the support that our family has received from the congregation has just been incredibly special. I tell people so often, I don't know how people make it in life without a church family. And since we've been here so long, the family we have here have seen us go through a lot. We've lost our parents and, several different things. And but we've always known how much everyone has loved us and cared for us. And it's been so obvious lately in the last couple of weeks. I don't know. It's the people for me.
Well, we're trying to make it so that you don't want to leave. But I know that there are many other things pulling, being a grandparent myself. I understand that that will trump everything else. So, well, I know that a lot of the love that you guys feel is just being reciprocated from the love that we feel from you guys. I want to speak this into you, that I can remember when my family first started attending, and you've seen my kids go from some of them being little, some of them being not so little, to being adults and getting married and having kids and being involved in ministry as adults. And I remember after the first few weeks that we were here, Tim, you had said something to me afterwards, and I know these things probably just gone by the wayside for you, but you said, I just enjoy sitting back and watching your family and how they interact. And that meant a lot to me at the time. And there was one other occasion, and I don't know that you would remember this, but our family's gone through a lot. And there was something early on in our time here. And you were feeling the pain that I was going through at the time. And I can remember standing out in the parking lot with you, and we were having a conversation. And at that point, you had been in ministry for 11 years. And I remember that because you said that. And you said, in my 11 years, I've never really doubted where things were headed, but this has made me question some things. And your vulnerability at that moment to be able to say that, and then to walk alongside our family and be a good friend and a great pastor through all of that was an encouragement to our entire family. And just you allowing yourself to be that transparent that, I think many pastors would never want to share that they even had any kind of glimmer of thought of questioning or anything like that. But it was very encouraging to me to know that we're in this walk together, and we'll figure it out together. Mm-hmm. So I want to just thank you guys for that kind of ministry and that kind of support. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it from this perspective today, neither one of us would have probably dreamed of what is happening right now as we're talking. Yeah. One of the other ministries that you've been involved in a great way is, and I know it's impacted you as you've witnessed it, is the kind of the birth and the maturing of our online ministry. And I just wanted to give you a moment to kind of speak to that because there's several people that listen to the podcast that are also online on Sundays, and you've many Sundays, most Sundays, serve as kind of an online pastor. You do double duty. You might be going up onto the platform, saying some announcements and so forth, and then walk right back to the sound booth, and you're on your laptop engaging in the chat while people are attending online. So I thought it might give you an opportunity to kind of speak to that as well.
Well, it has been a blessing truly to be a part of the online ministry, because there are people beyond this campus, literally sometimes not even in this country, who are watching on any given Sunday. It's kind of funny. I ran into a lady one time who walked up to me and physically walked up and I said, I don't think we've met. And she said, well, I know you. And I looked at her kind of funny. Well, I see you every Sunday when she's watching online, and I have yet to see her physically. So that was just kind of a funny one. But this coming Friday makes me think. I've got something happening that makes me think about this question you just asked. This coming Friday, I'm going to do have the privilege of preaching a funeral for a family who's been watching online. They came to us through our school. They have a child who is now 23, and she was a kindergartner here many years ago. And I remember when she was here, her mom actually attends online through watching from her home near Lansing, Michigan. So here you got somebody in another state that's watching, and then the grandparents of this girl that went to school, it's her grandfather that passed away, and I'm going to be preaching his funeral. And they've been watching online since before COVID. God gave us the opportunity to have this technology before COVID, and we just did nothing but strengthen it and build it up even more from that point forward. But one thing that's a challenge is, and to those that are listening that might be watching online, who watch kind of anonymously, honestly, we would love to know that you're there and who's watching, so that we can connect with you and we can pray for you by name. We see devices that log on. We just get a little code number. We don't have a name, and I realize there are people that want to stay anonymous, and if that's your choice, I understand that. But we want to be able to help you take your next step toward Jesus, and we can do that more effectively if we know who's watching and how we can help. And so it's a ministry that is so important, I know, especially for those that physically can't. This gentleman here, that's why he couldn't come to physically come here, because he had health issues. I know of other families as well that have that same challenge. But I'm thankful God's given us that technology to be able to grow the kingdom.
Amen. Well, I want to give you a chance. You can have your drop the mic moment, or any farewells that you would like to say as we wrap up today.
No, you can go.
Again, as I said this past Sunday, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, Debbie and I say thank you for the way that you invested in our family, in each of us, in our boys, Garrett and Blake. I think of the youth leaders who invested in them week after week after week. And some of those leaders are still here today serving as well. And so I just cannot thank the people of Shepherd enough for investing in us.
Amen.
Yeah. As I said before, for me, I guess part of it's just being a mom and just how much that means to me, how the people have cared about us and loved us so much. And you just never had any doubts from the very beginning when we came here, how much the people have loved us here. And that makes a mama's heart happy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we love you guys as well. And hopefully this past weekend, you had the opportunity to let them know that. But if you didn't, we do have an email address, podcast@shepnaz.org. You can always email us, and if you have nice things to say for Tim and Debbie, we'll make sure we forward to their undisclosed contact information in the future. You can check out everything that's going on in the church by going to shepnaz.org. Also, we encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Do some likes and shares so that other people can hear the word. For Pastor Tim and Debbie, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.